Hey guys, sorry I'm out today. We're going to talk a little bit about the stations review for the Chapter 4 test. And so what I got going on here in this first problem is I'm going to do for each of these pages, I'm going to just give you some hints, and I might even do a few problems for you so you get the idea of how to get you started today, okay? And two of the things you really need to look for is where it says slope-intercept form and when it says point-slope form, and how they are two different things. And I'm going to write those all over these review sheets, okay? So again, we are on station review number 1. And for this top line, all of these need to be in that y equals mx plus b form, where we know that m is the slope, which is always next to x. Remember that, right? And that this b is your y-intercept. Y-intercept. And remember, that always is with 0. Like it looks like this, so like that -5 is your y-intercept. Maybe I should write that, always with 0, okay? And then you just write these equations. So again, this should be y equals mx plus b. Think about what your slope is and what your y-intercept is, and just rewrite the equation. It already gave you the y equals, right? For the next problem, remember, anytime you see points, start labeling x1, y1, x2, y2. Because what you need to know for this is, first of all, I want it in the form of mx plus b. And second of all, you're going to have to remember the slope formula, which if you don't is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. These formulas will be given to you on the board. You don't have to memorize it, but you obviously need to know how to use it. And as long as you have this written down and you remember to label your x1 and y1, your x2 and y2, it's just plugging them in to this. If you remember in class, I've been starting every problem like that. Find that slope. That goes here next to x, right? And then write your y-intercept, which if you remember is always the number with 0, right? So that's that part. Okay, the next part, you need a point-slope form. Now that's the problem, right? That's this equation, right? And then it wants you to solve it for y. Well, we'll talk about that in a second, but the first thing you need to know is you need to find the slope here, right? Just like we did up here. Then you need to write it in this form, y minus equals blank times x minus. And if you remember in class, you might write even these down so you remember what goes in what spot. Well, how do I come up with those? Well, label your x1, y1, kind of like we did up above, and find your slope, and that will take the place of those. And here's the thing. Here they want you to use x1 and y1. Here they're telling you to use x2 and y2. And then what they want you to do is to solve it for y. And what that means is, first step is distribute slope onto the parentheses, right? So whatever you get here, you distribute that onto both of those. And then the next step is to do the opposite of the number next to y to both sides. Okay. I don't need you to write all this stuff down, but hopefully this is helping you get through the sheet. That'll help you on sheet 1. Let's go over to sheet 2. Okay. Sheet 2, on top, again, I'm going to write y equals mx plus b, right, where m is your slope, which is, of course, your rise over run. We kind of need to know that for what we're doing here. And remember, this is always by x, whereas this b right here is your y-intercept. And remember, your y-intercept is always the one not by x. Right? And so as you go through here, remember which one is the slope and which one is the y-intercept. Write them here. You start with your y-intercept when you're graphing these points. Start with your y-intercept at -3, and then use your rise over run from there. Start with your y-intercept, which hopefully you recognize which one of these numbers is the y-intercept based on what we set up above. Start with that on the y-axis, and then use your rise over run on from there. Okay? At the next problems, I'm going to kind of do one of these actually. This is y minus blank equals blank times x minus blank, right? Where we had to fill in those blanks with y1, m, and x1, right? We've seen that a couple times now. So for this first one, y minus blank equals blank times x minus blank. Well, look, this slope is our m. That goes here. This is our x1 and y1, which will go here and here. Remember which one goes in the right spot. But in terms of graphing these problems, don't let it be confusing. It's literally graph this point, which is -3, 4, right? Which means start here, go left 3, and then go up 4, and put a dot right there. right? And then just use your slope. Remember what this means. If it's negative, then you go down and right. If it's positive, then you go up and right. You always go right. We've said that a million times, right? So for this one, it's negative. I'm going to go rise over run. Down 1, right 1, 2, 3, put a dot. I'm going to go down 1, right 1, 2, 3, put a dot. There's my graph. Okay? Use this to do this. And remember, if this is confusing, the slope is 3 over 1. That might be helpful. Okay? All right, moving on to the bottom of the page. Again, you want to use that slope formula here, right? Remember what that is, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So when you go to do that, you want to label and then go from there. And then you got to keep going, right? Because your answer here needs to be in point slope form. And point slope form, remember, is this one, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And how we solve these, remember, is just fill in those spots like we talked about up here, okay? All right, that's that. Let's go on to the third sheet. All right, so for this one, let's talk about what it's asking you to do here. Like for each of these problems, it's trying to find the slope, the y-intercept, and the y-equals. So the slope is our m, which of course is your rise over run. Your y-intercept is your b. And then this is the equation, which again, it says slope-intercept form here, needs to be mx plus b. This one too needs to be mx plus b. Here, there's a little something different. Hopefully you can see that in a second. So again, this is my m and b. How do I find the m? Remember, pick 2 points, find a point. I see a point here, 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 I see a point here. Between any 2 points, just figure out your rise over your run. Between here and here, I would rise 1 and I would run 1, 2. So my rise over run is 1 over 2, which guess what? That means the slope is 1/2, right? Your y-intercept, again, is where it crosses this y-axis. And you can see it crosses right there. Hopefully you can write that number there. And now that I have m and b, it's just right in the equation with the slope in front of x, because the slope is always by x, and then the y-intercept out here. And if it's negative, you just write minus that, right? This one is a little bit different over here. Remember, when we talk about slope, and we have a vertical line or a horizontal line, and if we draw a 0 through it and it looks like the undefined symbol, then it's probably undefined. If it doesn't, then it's 0, right? This means undefined, okay? That should hopefully help you with that one. For the next set of problems, it says use the point slope form. So remember that again is this one. You got to be able to recognize when does it want slope form or point slope and when does it want slope intercept. I'm going to give you these formulas, but you got to recognize which one you have to plug it into, right? So for this one, again, you're going to have y minus blank equals blank times x minus blank. And you might want to just go through and label. And remember a few things, that when it's parallel, that means same slope. And when it's perpendicular, that means opposite, reciprocal. Or if you prefer, the flip. And that's how actually I'm going to refer to it the rest of this for the next page and so on. Okay. So in other words, when I look at the next problems here, and it wants to know if these two are parallel, think about this. We're doing kind of 2 problems here. We're trying to find the slope for A, and we're trying to find the slope for B. And so you want to label your x1 and y1, and then you're just going to do the slope formula, which again is this. Right? And so go label it and go plug it into those problems for line A. And then do it again separately for line B. And again, remember, if they are parallel, then they're going to be same slope. If they are perpendicular, if you remember that upside down T is perpendicular, they're going to be both opposites and flips. Okay? And so that's how that's going to work. For more on the parallel and perpendicular, let's see the next sheet. Okay, I'm going to give you a little more on that. Okay? So for instance, at the top of this sheet here, if they are the same, well then you would see m equals 3 and like m equals 3 over 1, right? If they are opposite and flip, then you would see like 3, and then you would see m equals negative, because that's what would make it opposite of this. And the flip would be 1 over 3, because this is really 3 over 1, right? Now for it to be neither, what you're looking at is like if m equals 3 and m equals negative 3. Those are opposites, but they're not flips. If I have m equals 3 and m equals 1/3, those are flips, but not opposites. Those mean neither. So you're just going through and finding your slope. So for this one, I can already see it's negative 2/3 right away, right, for number 3. And then for this one, well, to solve for the slope, I want to find out what's next to x when it's solved for y. So I need to do a little manipulation here. Those cancel. 2y equals 6 minus 3x, and divide everything by 2. And what I get here is y equals 3 minus 3 halves x. And so my slope here is the number next to x, negative 3 halves. Now look, those are both negative, so they're not opposites. They are flips, but they're not opposites. And so this one is neither. For this to be perpendicular, one of them would have to be positive. For this to be parallel, they'd both have to be the same, either both this or both that, right? All right, so you can do the other three. Down at the bottom, okay, a couple of things. Like this looks like a lot of stuff here, but it's not. Find the slope of line A. You had to do that on another page. Find any 2 points and find the slope, right? Find that rise over that run and put that answer right there. The y-intercept, you better be able to look at this line and tell me the y-intercept is right there and what number that is. And then when you go to write it, y equals, you write it in mx plus b, and m is your slope, and b is your y-intercept, right? And then for the line parallel, remember, this has to have the same slope. So again, it should be y equals, and it's going to be mx plus b. And remember that your y-intercept is always with a 0, so I'm giving you the y-intercept there. Now, without saying too much here, I do want you to remember that perpendicular means the opposite, so if one's positive, you go negative and vice versa, and the flip. That's going to help you with that one. And again, it's going to be y equals mx plus b, and you can see what's given to you in this problem. Okay? And that's it, guys. This is a little longer than I wanted it to be, but you're going to be splitting this up 4 times anyway as you work through this stuff. So do your thing today, and I'll catch you tomorrow.